All right, come along with me and I'll show you how to make my sandwich loaf. First, start off with 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast and then add 2 cups of warm water. I just heated it up in my kettle and let it slightly cool down. And then you're gonna add a 1/4 cup of sugar. Stir that all together and let it rest for 10 to 15 minutes or until you start seeing bubbles like this. I wanted to let it rest a bit more. And boom, there we go, bunch of bubbles. And now add 4 cups of flour to start off with. You may need 5, just depending on how sticky your dough is. And add 2 teaspoons of salt. I just used the Himalayan sea salt here and added that in. Then give it another good mix to just incorporate all the ingredients. I start off with a spoon and then I go in and mix with my hands, as you can see here. And then I get a tea towel wet and I just cover it and let it rest for an hour. After that hour, I do some stretch and folds, and I do 4 sets of stretch and folds with an hour between each stretch and fold. And then after the 3rd stretch and fold, I lightly dust the counter and the top of the bread. You go ahead and set your rings down for this part. And then I dump out the dough mixture onto the counter, make sure it's well dusted with flour. And I begin my 4th stretch and fold. And this is where I also split the dough into 2 so I can eventually form 2 loaves. As you can see here, I'm just doing my stretch and fold, and then I'm going to just take a knife and cut the dough in half to make those 2 separate loaves. And now that I've cut the dough successfully in half, I set one aside just in the pot that it was resting in, and I form one of the halves into a loaf size. First, I just kind of let it flatten out, stretch it, and then I'll start my rolling process to form it into a loaf. Now that it is formed into a loaf shape, I get my loaf pan, I line it just with some baking paper, and I place that formed loaf into the loaf pan. And the other portion of the dough, like I said, I just put it into the pot again and cover to let it rise. And the next step, you're going to want to preheat your oven to 176 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. As it preheats, it does its final rise. So that's just me here turning it on. And then since it's been rising for about 45 minutes, now I'm just going to pop the loaf pan into my oven here. And once it's in the oven, I let it bake for about 30 to 35 minutes, and it'll pop out this nice golden brown color. When you cut into it, it'll spring up. It's very soft and just great for sandwiches.